heartfelt and so feeling in nature. He's deeply devoted to healing in his school, Four Winds Society. He trains doctors, nurses, teachers, individuals in the arts of shamanic healing. And it's such a pleasure to have him here because he's had a lot of experience with the Orbs, which he's recognized and seen in his work in the Andes with the indigenous peoples. His books, and following this at the bookstore, he'll have a signing on some of his many books. It's a great privilege to welcome him here today. Alberto Villoldo.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Welcome to this weekend of Orbs, of medicine and magic. And beautiful dance. Wasn't that an exquisite dance? Yeah. And you know, the Orbs love a good time. Have you noticed that when they love a party? And no photographs, please. Let me ask you tonight to not take any pictures. So they love a good party. So let's everybody get up and do a little bit of a hip shake. Come on. Oh, yeah. Woo. All right. Get those hips going. Move them. All right. Other direction now. Now say hello to the person next to you with your hips. Use your hips. Okay. Woo. Now the other person, the other side. Oh, okay. All right. That's enough. That's enough. Beautiful. So I'm going to ask you to join me. I'm going to ask you to join me in a prayer as we open sacred space, as we call on the four corners of the world to open sacred space. And I believe south is this way, isn't it? One time we were in Machu Picchu, and an old medicine woman gets up and she turns to the west and she goes to the winds of the south. And she turns to the north and she goes to the winds of the west. And I'm about to get up to correct her. And this old medicine man pulls me down and he says, for the next week, that's south. So join me in a prayer as we align ourselves with the four corners of the world. To the winds of the south. Great serpent, mother of the waters, we call on you. Come and wrap your coils of light around us. Teach us your ways, the beauty way, to walk with beauty on the earth, to touch everyone we touch with beauty. Be with us. Ho! To the winds of the west, mother, sister, jaguar, we call on you, mother. Hampamuichis, mamai, come and walk among us. Teach us your ways. Teach us the ways of integrity, of impeccability. Teach us the ways beyond death. Ho! To the winds of the north. Sihuarkente, hummingbird, grandmothers and grandfathers, ancient ones, guardians and keepers of this land, we come to honor you today, you who've come before us, and you who will come after us, our children's children. Ho! To the winds of the east, the place of the rising sun, eagle, condor, come to us, mother. Teach us your ways of the nest and the ways of the clouds of flight. Keep us sweetly under your wing. Ho! Santa Tierra Pachamama, Pachamamita, thank you, Mother, for your breath, your waters, and to all our relations, the stone people, the plant people, the creepy crawlies, the winged, the furred, the finned, all our relations. Ho! Inti Taita, Father Sun, Grandmother Moon, to all the star nations, our star brothers and sisters, to all the sacred mountains of this land, and Ilya Tiksi Wirakocha, Wakantanka, Great Spirit, you who are known by 1,000 names, and you who are the unnameable one, thank you for bringing us together for a weekend of celebration, for allowing us to sing the song of life one more day. Oh. So over the next few days, we're going to be asking ourselves a lot about orbs. What are they? Who are they? What do they want? Do they want anything from us? What do they bring? And hopefully, tonight I'll manage to confuse you enough so that you come completely open-minded to the rest of the weekend, because you have an extraordinary cast of presenters here. And I'm going to speak tonight from the perspective of the shaman, of the wisdom keepers. And the wisdom keepers are not ordinary shamans. They're the sages. They're not the healers, they're not the bone setters, they're not the midwives. They are the keepers of the wisdom. And I've had the good fortune of training with the wisdom keepers of the Americas for the last 25 years. Actually, it's getting on 30 years. And so what I'm going to offer you this evening is a perspective of the shamans, of the wisdom keepers, of the earth peoples. But to understand that perspective, we have to understand a little bit about the shaman, who the shaman is. Because otherwise we will collapse the orbs into a phenomenon, into a fascinating phenomenon. How many of you take pictures of orbs? Incredible. In fact, it's hard to keep them out of your photographs now, right? You've got to ask them to go away. You want to take a nice picture. But we have to be sure that we don't fall into the trap of considering it simply a phenomenon, but rather establish an interactive, a relationship, a subjective experience, a participatory experience, not an objective experience of them, because that will objectify them and turn them into an object of our curiosity, of our admiration, but we'll be missing a tremendous amount of juice and possibility. So before I tell you the shamanic perspective and particularly of the earth keepers, of the wisdom keepers that I work with, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the shaman, who the shaman is. And the shaman is a man or a woman who mediates between the visible and the invisible world. In fact, the most important statement of the 20th century was that wonderful formula that Einstein left us of E equals mc squared. Extraordinary. How simple, huh? And our science is focused on the m side of the equation almost exclusively. Whereas the phenomenon, the world of the shaman, exists almost exclusively in the E side, in the energetic side of the equation. And what the shaman does is to be the mediator. She dances on top of the equal sign, helps to birth that which is in need of being born, helps to return back to the world of spirit that which is dying. And my training is as a medical anthropologist. In fact, I began studying psychology and eventually the brain, and dissecting the brain and putting it under the microscope in the hopes of finding the mind. And back then, it was a reasonable search back then. And one day, I discovered that I was looking out of the wrong end of the microscope. That instead of going smaller and smaller, I had to go bigger and bigger. Perhaps even to a worldview that challenged the notions even of time and of space that I took for granted in my everyday life. So I gave up my job. I had my own lab at San Francisco State University. I was one of the youngest faculty, and I gave up my lab, my teaching position, and went off into the Amazon. And everybody thought I was mad, including my mother. In fact, about 6 years ago, she comes up to me and she says, Alberto, when are you going to get a job? And I go, Mother, I've written 9 books, and I teach around the world. She says, yeah, but it was so nice when you taught at the university. I could tell my friends what you did then. So I went and began studying the shamans and discovered that it was an entirely different tradition than the one that I had been exposed to in the Western world. Even though my grandmother was a healer, we considered that old people stuff. We were modern, scientific, civilized, and drank pasteurized milk, even though we had a cow next door. What I discovered is that the worldview of the Earth peoples is dramatically different from ours because it is a worldview of the feminine. Whereas our worldview is deeply steeped in the masculine. In fact, it's completely biased against the feminine. And we all know that. This isn't news for anyone. But what I'd like to do is to spend a couple of minutes and look at the sources of this very deep bias against the feminine, because it is rooted in our mythology. And we have a very funky mythology in the West. For example, we have the only mythology in the planet, practically, I think there's one in Borneo as well, in which we were kicked out of the garden. Nobody else on the planet was cast out of the Garden of Eden. The Aborigines weren't, the Sub-Saharan Africans weren't, the Native Americans weren't. We were the only people to be kicked out of the garden. Everybody else was given the garden to be the stewards and the caretakers of the garden. And as we're being kicked out of the garden, there's a voice that said, "For cursed is the earth because of you, and you too." Woman, cursed is the earth because of you, woman. And to the man, the voice says, "And with the sweat of your back you will take your fruit from the earth, and it shall grow thorns and thistles for you." Remember that? That's in page 2. I'm not making this up. You can check this out next time you stay at a motel. The voice didn't say, "And the earth shall grow strawberries and mangoes and papayas for you." It said, "It shall grow thorns and thistles." So right in page 2 of our mythology, we managed to really piss off the feminine. Because the earth is cursed because of woman. And then our mother, the earth, will not feed us and support us. She'll grow thorns and thistles for us. Right at the beginning of our mythology, we disconnect from the earth and from the feminine. And later on, in fact, this goes on, because in the year 1564, there was a council in Rome, the Council of Trent, Google it when you get back home, to find out whether animals, Indians, and women had souls. The first day it was decided that animals and Indians, or people of color, did not have souls. And it took 23 days of deliberation to decide that women indeed had souls, smaller than men's, but indeed had souls. So the bias towards the masculine in our culture has been extraordinary. In fact, when the conquistador arrived in the Americas, they brought with them the Bible. And they said to the Inca, "For this is the word of God." You've heard that expression before, right? And the Inca took the Bible and put it to his ear. I mean, somebody says, "This is the word of Elvis." You want to listen to it, right? And after a few moments, threw it down, and he said, "What kind of God is this that does not speak. What kind of mute God is this that has not spoken in 1,500 years back then? Because when you are cast out of the garden, you no longer speak to the rivers and to the trees and to God, like we did when we still walked in the garden. So our Western traditions are extraordinarily patriarchal, even so that we have practically the only mythology in which the masculine gives birth to the feminine. Remember that story with Adam and the rib? No other mythology in the planet does the masculine give birth to anything, except in ours. So another one of the myths that we inherit is that myth of living in a predatory universe, in a universe in which there is a Darth Vader. And the Earth peoples do not live in a predatory universe. In fact, evil does not exist in the indigenous mythologies as an independent principle. It exists only in the hearts of men and women, but not as an independent principle that we have to guard ourselves against. Now, of course, these mythologies spill into medicine. Medicine also tells us that we live in a predatory universe, and that you have to be careful because the minute that you cut yourself, you have invisible microorganisms that are feeding and having sex inside you. You didn't learn it that way in biology. But that's what they're telling you. Now, if you cut yourself, it's a good idea to clean the cut. But the indigenous peoples do not live in a predatory universe. For the shaman, there's no difference between being killed by a microbe and being killed by a jaguar. For us, one of them is an illness, you're killed by a microbe, and the other one is an accident, killed by a jaguar. For the shaman, they're the same. You have to be in proper relationship with life if you don't want to be part of the food chain. Otherwise, both microbes and jaguars are going to be looking at you as lunch. So it's a very different mythology, the mythology of the Earth peoples, and the way that orbs are perceived in traditional societies is different from how we perceive them in the West. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So at the very beginning, we opened sacred space. We called on the four directions. We called on serpent, jaguar, hummingbird, and condor. Mother Earth and Father Sky. Now, the first time that I saw this, I said, how quaint. And then I began to understand what was going on. Because the indigenous people discovered that the entire landscape of creation has been created with an alphabet that has only 4 letters. And those letters are serpent, jaguar, hummingbird, eagle. And they'll tell you that it doesn't matter what you call it, because you go to the Hopi or the Lakota and they'll call it buffalo. The only thing that matters is that it comes when you call it. But they discovered that all of creation is composed of 4 principles, which we have also discovered in the West. In fact, physicists will tell you that there are 4 fundamental laws in physics. And this is what Einstein was trying to unify when he was trying to come up with the unified field theory. They'll tell you that there are 4 fundamental laws that are gravity, levity, electromagnetism, the strong and the weak nuclear force. So these are the 4 fundamental laws of physics. Now, biologists have discovered also that all of the living universe is made up of 4 letters, which are, who remembers what they are? L-O-V-E. No? Try again. That's close. A, T, C, G. Right. These are the 4 components of DNA. These 4 letters make up DNA. And really, if you look at it, there's only one life form in the planet, and it's DNA. And it has an extraordinary sense of humor, because it manifests as redwood trees, as grasses, as horses, as eagles, as humans. Everything is composed of these 4 base pairs. Everything uses the alphabet of DNA. Now, shamans called it serpent, jaguar, hummingbird, eagle. Remember that they come from an animistic tradition. So let me give you another example. We're going to relate this to orbs pretty soon. In physics, one of the fundamental laws of physics is the second law of thermodynamics. Remember the second law of thermodynamics? Don't tell on me, Bill. Who remembers the second law of thermodynamics? Anybody here? How many of you have kids here? Okay. You know the second law of thermodynamics is the law of entropy, which is the law of increasing chaos. Entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, is why ice melts into a puddle of water, evaporates into a gas, seeks increasing disorder. And you don't need to go to Harvard to understand this. You know how kids put their milk like that? Right at the, and then they start eating around it, and you see it on the floor already. So entropy is the law that tells you that it's really easy to go from milk on the glass to milk on the floor, but it don't go the other way around. That's entropy. Entropy is the reason you carry a day planner, because you know all of the shit's gonna hit the fan and you want to schedule how it hits it. Now, you don't need to go to Harvard to understand this. All you need to do is to have children. So societies around the world understood this is one of the fundamental laws, and they called it jaguar. Because everything in the universe is tending towards increasing chaos. But they saw that life was anti-entropic, that life sought increasing levels of order and complexity, that you have cells teaming up with each other to become tissue, teaming up with each other to become organs, teaming up with each other to become eagles. Life was anti-entropic, and they called that jaguar. The difference being that you can't go, yo, second law of thermodynamics, come to me, teach me your ways. But if you have someone who has a cancer spreading throughout their body, you can go, mother, sister, jaguar, bring order out of chaos. You have a village that has become too rigid, a relationship, a school. Mother, sister, jaguar, bring a little bit of chaos, of renewal. Let those things die that are ready to die. So that indigenous people have an animistic relationship with everything, even the laws of physics. But you had to be able to call on them, and they had to come when you called them. And that was the shaman's agreement with spirit. The agreement was that you call and spirit responds. You call, spirit answers. Not 60% of the time, not 80% of the time, not 99%, but 100% of the time. Pretty cool, huh? Until you read the small print in the back. which says, Spirit calls, you answer. Not 40% of the time, not 60, not wait till my 401k plan is fully funded and then I'll respond to the call from Spirit. 100% of the time. In the Andes, they call this Aini, living in right relationship, living in a state of yes, because if you have to wait for Spirit to call, it's too late already. So this animistic relationship exists even with time. Even with time. Because for us in the West, time flows in one direction only. Time flies like an arrow. The future is always still ahead of us. The past is already behind us. We know of only one kind of time that flies like an arrow. And we have only one kind of calendar. Today is May 5th, right? 4th. Anybody has September 3rd in their calendar? No. The Mayans have 24 calendars. They know of more than one kind of time. We know of only this kind of time that flies like an arrow, whose main operating principle is causality, cause and effect, the basis of Western science. Shamans knew of another kind of time that turned like a wheel, where the reason that you're here today is not because you signed up 2 weeks ago, but because of something that might happen 2 months from now. And the main operating principle in this kind of time is synchronicity. So that the shamans understood that you could step outside of ordinary time, that you could step into this sacred time that turns like a wheel, where you can heal events that occurred in the past, where you can nudge destiny, where you're not bound to this linear relationship with time. They understood this kind of time. They could step into timelessness. They could step outside of time itself. And they did that through the practice of deep stillness, And those of you who meditate, you have experienced this in deep meditation. Time stops. Or you think you've been meditating for 5 minutes and an hour's gone by. So this notion of time is very much a Western notion. Very much. You've heard of Indian time, right? Spanish time? Yeah, Hispanic time. Shaman time. There's a story of a group of shamans from Mexico that go to Australia. And they asked the Australians, the Aborigines, they said, do you guys have this notion of mañana? You all know mañana, right? Do you have this notion of mañana, tomorrow, like we do? Which is, why deal with today with what's going to take care of itself by itself tomorrow? That's what mañana is really about. So the elders gather and they begin talking in their conference. And they're speaking late as the sun sets, the moon's risen, and finally one of the elders stands up and says, yeah, we have a similar notion to mañana, but without such a sense of urgency about it. So the interesting thing for the medicine people is that there's no supernatural world. There's only the natural world, with its visible and its invisible domains. And the task is to engage that domain, not simply describe it, but engage it. In the West, again, with our tradition, which is very masculine, we want to describe it. You look through a medical text, you see how many ways there are of being sick. It's incredible. And if you discover a new way of being ill, you become famous. You get to put your name on it. But if you think about it, there are very few ways of being well. So shamans don't diagnose, they heal. We diagnose superbly. So our tradition is an information-based tradition. The shamanic traditions are a knowledge-based tradition. The difference between them is that information is knowing that water is H2O. Knowledge is being able to make it rain. And our task today, of course, is to combine the two into what Bill pointed out to me over dinner would be wisdom. To combine the two to attain a wisdom, an enduring wisdom of our time. So the task for the shaman is not what are they, but how do we engage them? How do we interact? What do they want? What do they bring? How do we establish a dialogue? The medicine people throughout the Americas say that the veils between the worlds are thinning, that the veils are thinning, that the invisible world and the visible world are coming closer to each other again, that they're interpenetrating each other, that there are pathways, that there are loops interconnecting them, that they're leaking into each other and permeating each other. So what I would like to propose to you is that we explore a methodology of engaging this invisible world that we seem to be able to photograph, to capture in our digital and in our film cameras, but which we cannot allow to remain in the realm of phenomenon, of the phenomenal, because then it distances us from it. Then we don't have to explore what the significance and the implications of these luminous manifestations are. And as I've sat with the elders and showed them the images of orbs that we've taken, we've talked about how in sacred time, we're not informed only by who we have been, but by who we're becoming. See, the way that evolution happens from the perspective of Western science is that we evolve in between generations. That maybe your children are going to be smarter and handsomer than you are, but that it's too late for you. That we're warm, fussy carriers for our genes that leap off into the next generation. Evolution happens in between generations. The wisdom keepers say yes, but you can also quantum leap within generations. So from the more feminine, indigenous, shamanic perspective, evolution happens within generations. And if our children are lucky, they'll inherit the traits that we've developed within our lifetimes. All of the prophecies of the indigenous Americas are speaking about a new human appearing on the planet, about a quantum leap in humanity. And it's not going to be the indigo babies, it's not going to be the crystal babies. It's us. It's we. It's you. It's me. It's all of us that are quantum leaping within our lifetimes to birth a new human that I like to call Homo Luminous. No longer Homo sapiens, but Homo Luminous. So that within this other kind of time, of non-ordinary time, we're informed not only by who we have been, by the genes that you inherited, by your karma, by your psychology, by what happened to you when you were 12. See, the problem with this kind of time that flies like an arrow is that it breeds psychologists. Because you are the result of what happened to you when you were 12, when you were 4, or in a former lifetime, so that the past keeps spilling over into the present and claiming the present. But in this other kind of time that turns like a wheel, the future is able to reach back like a giant hand and bring us forward and call to us, summon us, beckon us to who we are becoming. And I'd like for us to entertain that hypothesis. This is what the medicine people believe. They believe that our children's children are reaching back to us and saying, create a world in which we can be born, in which we can be born, in which we can live. Dream a world into being in which we can be born. It's the future crying to us. But not only pleading with us, but also offering us the codes for the new human, for who we're becoming. So we understand that DNA has the codes for manufacturing the proteins that create the body. And DNA is very sexy today. But the medicine people understand that we have a luminous energy field that surrounds the physical body and that organizes the physical body in the same way that a magnet organizes iron filings on a piece of glass. So if we can download, and that this luminous energy field is an information field. It's an information field. It's the software that drives the hardware to manufacture proteins to create the body. What if we could download version 7.1 of the software and grow new bodies that age differently, that heal differently, that die differently, and quantum leap into that which we're becoming? Now, in traditional societies, you only engage the invisible world. And remember that the invisible world is interpenetrating the visible one today. You only engage the invisible world within sacred space. Within sacred space. Sacred space is safe space. And we created sacred space by calling on the four directions, on the four corners of the world, heaven and earth. We created sacred space. And we're going to teach you, I'm going to show you another way of creating sacred space. The first kind of sacred space was calling on serpent, jaguar, hummingbird, condor. So much easier than calling on gravity, electromagnetism, like nuclear force, strong nuclear force. And it's interactive. And then heaven and earth. This connects us to the ecosphere. There's another kind of sacred space that the medicine people work with that connects us to the noosphere. The noosphere, the distinctly human sphere. And I'm going to demonstrate how we do that and ask that we try that together. And let me give you a little bit of the understanding here. You're all familiar with the seven chakras in the body, right? The 7 chakras in the body. In the indigenous traditions, we work with an 8th chakra that is outside the body, but inside the luminous energy field. Outside the physical body, but inside the luminous energy field. It's what we in the West call the soul. These are the energetics of the soul that exist outside of time but manifest in time. And our body is the manifestation of the chakra. In fact, when we die, what happens is that the information from each one of our chakras is downloaded into this 8th chakra that then goes about creating a new body. It goes about tracking the families and the parents where we're going to have the best time and the most fun, right? It goes around finding the parents where we're going to learn the most and grow the most, even bringing them together for a single night of love in order to be born through them, which is what happened with my parents. Except they stayed married for another 55 years after that. But we'll bring two people together even for that single night in order to be born through them. So now this is the lore. This is the lore. This is the lore of jungle peoples, of Andean peoples, of the Americas. Remember that all of the peoples of the Americas migrated across the Bering Straits. Before that came from the Himalayas and Africa, bringing a singular mythology with them that then acquired color and flavor of Maya, of Inca, of Hopi, But the mythology is is that our eighth chakra is what goes about manufacturing our bodies from lifetime to lifetime. So the way that we open the second kind of sacred space, and I'm going to ask, I have two assistants here. If you could step up, please. And I'd like to introduce you to Dean. This is Dean. And Colette. And so Colette, why don't you go to that corner, and Dean, why don't you go to this one, and I'll go in the middle, and let's demonstrate opening our luminous energy field. And let's begin with and watch them, beginning with our hands in our heart chakra, taking a couple of deep breaths, and watch them the first time. And what they're going to do, they're going to drop into their center, they're going to center themselves, and then reach up into this eighth chakra and expand it with both hands, except I'm holding a microphone, like they're doing right now, yeah. And expanding it to envelop themselves. And you notice that each one of them has their own style. And then resting, residing in that place. So let me demonstrate as well. Beginning with your hands in your heart, and you can follow me as we do this. Your hands in your heart chakra. This is, those of you who do yoga, this is Anjali Mudra, heavenly mudra. A couple of deep breaths. Dropping into that heart space. And then bringing your hands up slowly in an inhalation, all the way up to the very top of your head. And like a peacock, opening its fan, and it's okay to bump into your neighbor. Expand that eighth chakra and envelop yourselves in this eighth chakra. And close your eyes for a moment and sense what it's like to be held in this luminous center that existed before you were born and will exist after you die. And that has created so many bodies over so many lifetimes. And it's within this sacred space that the shaman engages the invisible world. Because only that which is of the highest vibration, of the highest quality, can share this space with you, can enter this space. Only that which is of your highest good can enter this soul space. And here's where the wisdom keepers engage the invisible world. Where they're able to be informed, to download the codes for the new human, for whom we are becoming as a people, as a species. To engage that which can be known but not told. And now open your eyes and observe Dean and Colette as they gather their luminous energy field into a radiant orb above their head again. To a radiant sun above their heads, and bring it into their physical body, bringing that information, that energy into their physical body, renewing, healing your body. And let's go ahead and try it together. And this is a prayer this is prayer in movement. This is intention in movement. Of course, this is all done through the practice of intention. Without intention, it's just simply a silly movement. With intention, it's everything. And then bring your hands back to your heart and just drop into your heart space for a moment again. Okay. Did you sense this? Did you experience this? Particularly when we're in a group, it's so much easier to experience it. Yeah. Now, if you were looking through the eyes of your 8th chakra, those eyes that have seen the birth and death of galaxies, you know what you would have seen in this room? Orbs. That's all there is. The body is secondary. You know, make a new one. That's what we would perceive, would be these luminous orbs. These radiant beings that we are. So practice this at home. And as you do so, create an intimate space where you can come as you would for the beloved, to meet the beloved, where you can come and engage these luminous beings that are making themselves so accessible to us at this time for our healing, for our growth, for the healing of others. Because the veils between the world are thinning. So Colette, let's do it one more time. Dean, let's do it one more time. Hands to the heart chakra. And you can all come and join us if you like. A couple of deep breaths. Drop into your breath. You find your intention through your breath. Intention is a practice of the heart. It's not a practice of the head. And then as you're ready, begin to bring your hands up into timelessness. And this is a gesture, of course. It's your intention that's doing it. But you're bringing your hands into infinity and expanding that radiant sun above your head to envelop you. Reciting for an instant outside of ordinary time, in that sacred time that turns like a wheel. And within this space, know that you are a resident, a citizen of both the visible and the invisible worlds. And that you can invite for tea anyone you choose. Into the sacredness of this space, of your soul space. You can invite those from the past, the ancestors. Not just your biological ancestors, but our spiritual ancestors. To sit with you in sacred space. You can invite our children's children to come and sit with you in timelessness, in sacred space. And go ahead and gather your luminous energy field, again, like a peacock closing its fan. And feel this radiant orb above your head. Feel it. Feel its pulsing. Feel its coolness, its vibration. Imagine it. Use your imagination. We live in an imaginal world. The shamans called it dreaming the world into being. And now bring this radiant orb into your head, past your face, your chest, your belly, reinforming yourself from that source that informs all of life, healing, renewing yourself, downloading those new codes. Remember, we are a field of information that organizes minute particles of matter that we call a body within it. Downloading those new codes. Now I'm going to ask Dean and Colette to repeat this exercise and show you how they can hold an entire room, all of us, within their luminous energy field. Let's try it again. Can you hold your field of intentionality to envelop everyone in your life? Your children, your children's children, your ancestors, your loved ones? Yeah. In fact, they're so good at it, they can hold the entire world in their field of intentionality. As can you. And when you do, then we step into that creator place where we can dream our world into being, because if we don't dream our world into being, we have to settle for a world that has been dreamt for us by the National Enquirer, by Washington, by the nightmare of history. And now gather your luminous energy field again, Dean, Colette. Practice this. Eventually the task of the shaman is to hold all of creation in their field of intentionality. And they acquire stewardship, of course, over all of creation. And then we're able to dream the world into being. To dream the world into being. To dream a different dream. To write a different story about humanity. Because the stories that we have about humanity are tired and exhausted stories. They're stories that developed, that emerged at a time when the Earth was still flat. When the Hubble Space Telescope did not exist. We need to come up with a new story for humanity. A story that encompasses not only the flat Earth and the round Earth and the galaxies that we've been able to see and the universes that we're postulating may exist. We need to come up with a new story for humanity, to dream a new world into being. And of course we begin doing that by dreaming our own lives differently into being. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Colette. Dean and Colette will be around if anyone has any questions. And they'd be happy to answer any questions you have. They're both graduates of our Healing the Light Body School and can also tell you about our training programs where what I do today is to train Western shamans. We train physicians, we train nurses, we train lay people, we train teachers to mediate between the visible and the invisible world. And today the invisible world is making itself not only evident, but immensely accessible. In fact, we're tripping over it. We can't avoid it any longer. And it's a matter of how we engage it, And doing it within sacred space. And let me tell you one of the motives for doing this work within sacred space. The prime mandate of creation, according to lore, according to the indigenous peoples, the Great Spirit created all of life in both the visible and the invisible worlds. And the prime mandate given to all of life was to thrive, to grow, to multiply, to do anything and everything to seek its own highest good. Remember that in the medicine traditions, in the shamanic traditions, evil does not exist as an independent principle. There's no evil in the universe. There's only evil in the hearts of men and women. But there are things that are good for you and things that are not so good for you. So the prime mandate to all creatures was to thrive, to multiply, and to seek their own highest good. When a fisherman catches a fish, he has the greatest love for that fish. And it's a blessing for the fisherman. It's bad luck for the fish. It's from the shamanic perspective, we have to take the same sense of judgment in our engagements with the invisible world. Not that they're bad things and good things. They're simply things that may not be good for us, that are seeking their own highest good, so that we don't make ourselves available for engagements that, instead of elevating us, are going to be diminishing us. My mentor, who's an old Indian man, used to say to me, Alberto, most people believe that life is a conjugation of the verb to eat. You eat, you get eaten. All of life is a conjugation. But life is also a conjugation of the verb to grow. And he would say to me that we're not here only to grow corn, that we're here to grow gods. That we're here to grow gods. That's what we're becoming, who we're becoming. And of course we grow our God nature in direct proportion to the level of stewardship that we're willing to take for creation. But traditionally, we only engage the invisible world from the protected space of sacred space, from the place of sacred space, where we're protected, where we're going to draw to us only the highest of energies. Now, that's why the Orbs love coming to ceremony. They love coming to ritual. I've got some slides. I wonder if we could show these. Dean, are we set up for and I've got 6 or 7 slides only, because I know you're going to see so many images of Orbs over the weekend. So if we could get this going, it would be brilliant. Okay. So this is, I'm going to show you actually a little bit of the landscape where the wisdom keepers of the Andes come from. We don't need that. So this is Machu Picchu, cities in the cloud, extraordinary city. And these are some of the wisdom keepers of the Andes, some of the old people. That's the old man, the Dalai Lama. Now look at this medicine woman. Look at all the, can you see the orbs all around her? Can you see the one above my head here teaching? Now this is a lineage orb. It's above a group that is holding a fire ceremony. And look at how she's taking the fire into her. Yeah. And then this is after the fire ceremony. And here, I want to pause this a second. I'm sorry that I'm here in my jogging outfit, but I was meditating, and I call my wife, and I say to her, "Come, get the camera," and because I sensed this orb on me, and started connecting through my third chakra. And if you notice in the next image, the camera's focusing on the orb, not on me. Do you see it? Can you see it clearly there? Yeah. And it's connected to my third chakra. So they love ceremony, they love sacred space. Now this is in the Amazon, and this is an Amazon, a jungle medicine man, right before ceremony. This is in the Mother of God River. And look at all the orbs that are showing up for ceremony as we're opening sacred space. And the next is a slightly enhanced version of the last one. Fire ceremony. Now look at this orb in her third chakra. Do you notice that right at the center of her chest is like a sun? So here's not only a merging of energy, but a downloading, a tremendous exchange of information that's taking place. Remember, all energy contains information. And there's a tremendous download of information happening here. And look at the blissful, the ecstatic look on her face. So I'll run them through one more time as we talk. The photograph right before this image, we took a picture of the same landscape, and then this medicine woman walked on, took her picture, and here she was. So when you hear Native American people saying, "all my relations," you know what they're talking about. It's not their cousins. Now this is what they refer to as a lineage orb. So it's an entire village of people, or entire community. It's a group soul, if you would. A lineage orb of an entire lineage of medicine men and women that are working from the invisible world to assist us. Now, there's a fire ceremony going on here, and you can see this tendril coming down to the fire ceremony, and it's feeding. It's actually nourishing itself from the fire, but not from the fire. It's nourishing itself from the prayers. From the prayers and the intentionality that's being offered to the ancestors. When you honor the ancestors, you honor those who've come before, and then they show up to receive our prayers. Now these ancestors, remember, when you're working outside of time, are not only coming from the past, they're coming from the future as well. And I'll keep these running so that those of you in the sides who cannot see them can come up and look at them later. But they love celebration, they love ceremony. So the notion that I'd like to leave you with is that at this time that the veils between the worlds are thinning, that the future may be reaching back to us like a giant hand and asking us to dream a different world. Not only asking us to dream a different world, but bringing us the resources, the power, the energy to manifest that dream, to birth a new world into being today. So that our children's children have a world that they can be born into. They're not only pleading with us, they're reaching back. Remember that when you step outside of time, time doesn't flow linearly anymore. It's all happening at once. And they're reaching back to us. And not only asking and pleading, but offering us resources to dream a different world into being. To dream a healed world into being. One where the rivers are clean, where people live at peace with each other. The prophecies of the Americas say, and these are the prophecies of the Hopi, of the Inca, of the Mayan, they say that in the next 6 years, between now and the year 2012, is going to be a time of tremendous renewal in the world, of extraordinary renewal, that a new species is being born right now in our midst, and they are us. They are we. They speak about a time of tremendous upheaval. And they say that we have all known each other before. That before we were born, we were all in a great green, grassy plain, and a very large angel stepped forward and said, you know, it's going to be a very challenging time on earth. It's going to be a time of famine, of pestilence, of war, of upheaval, of earth changes. It's going to be a time of tremendous need. Who wants to go? And you're not here because everybody else took a step back. We did not want to miss out on this time that we're living together. And we wanted to come and help birth it. Help birth what the prophecies speak about as a golden time, as a golden age for humanity. Now, this is not cast in stone. It could go either way. You know, the Supreme Court could get together in a couple of months and declare that Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be the next president of the United States. And it could all go down to two. It's not set in stone. Our energy, our intentionality, our prayers are essential at this time. Our dreaming the world together into being. Our tracking forward into the future to see who we're becoming. Throwing a great big grappling hook into the future and bringing it back to inform us today. This is what the shaman has always done. The shaman has always tracked forward into the future. If you were a medicine woman and you lived in a coastal village, you had to take the fishermen to lead them the following morning to where the fish were going to be when the fishermen got there. You had to intersect the timeline of the fishermen with the timeline of the fish. If you lived in the plains, you had to lead the hunters to where the buffalo were going to be the following day. You had to track forward along the timeline of the buffalo. If you got there and there were fresh buffalo tracks, no good. You were out of a job. You had to be able to track forward and lead the hunters, lead the fishermen to where the game was going to be. That's what shamans have always done. This is what we are doing today, what we have to do. We're tracking forward to find that possible world, even though not a very probable one, that possible world. And in the act of finding it, we're making it a little bit more probable. You know, my children love to fish, and I hate to fish. I love eating fish, but I don't like fishing. I don't like pulling anything out of the water by its lips. But I take them fishing, and I used to, particularly when they were younger. Now they're 15 and 19, and they're into other things. But we would go off the coast of Santa Barbara in these big fishing boats. There would be day-long fishing trips. And my kids would know that whatever side of the boat I was fishing on, there were not going to be any fish. So they would go to the other side of the boat. Now, by the end of the day, everybody in that boat knew that wherever I was jinxed. And I'd have this whole 100-foot-long deck all for myself. And there'd be 40 other people fishing on the other side, bringing up. And one time my son comes over, and I've cut the hook off my line, and I'm just casting with the weight. I'm having a great time. And he said, "Dad, are you mad?" And I go, son, I don't want to have to worry about some stray fish coming under the boat to my side. No, I just cut the hook. So our task today is to track for the kind of life that we want to wake up into next week, next year, 5 years from now. To track for the kind of future that we want our families to inherit, for the kind of destiny that we want our planet to have. This is what our task today is. And I believe we're getting extraordinary spiritual assistance to do this. Extraordinary help, extraordinary assistance. The wisdom keepers of old called this dreaming the world into being. And they said there were 3 things that had to be done. The first one they called cleaning up your river. We had to clean our river. We had to heal ourselves. We had to heal ourselves. So we did not continue dreaming the same nightmare over and over, like a friend of mine who sent me an invitation to his wedding. And I called him up as soon as I got it. It was an invitation to his 5th wedding. And I said, do you remember what you asked me to do to you if you ever thought of getting married again? And he said, but Alberto, it's different this time. You've got to meet her. And I met her, and he wanted me to perform the ceremony. And I said to him, I will do your death rites before I marry you. You've got to stop looking for the right partner and start working on becoming the right partner. Didn't like that, stopped talking to me. And 9 months later, he calls me and he says, why did you let me do it? So we had to clean our river so we don't have to continue dreaming the same nightmare over and over again. That's number 1. The second one is the practice of truth, practicing truth. The practice of truth, becoming truth. Bringing truth to every situation, to every encounter that we find ourselves in. Speaking truth, walking truth, becoming truth. The practice of truth. And the third is to be ready to die at any instant. To be prepared. To have no I love yous that have not been said, no I forgive yous that have not been spoken. To be ready at every instant, to be complete. Because we think sometimes that we have 300 years to get our act together. I'm going to start doing yoga next week. Live every instant in completion, with total presence. The shamans speak about this as being ready to meet death every instant of your life. And when you do that, you are claimed by life so that you can never be claimed by death. Because the worst death in the eyes of the healers of old was not the one that happened at the end of your life. That one was the inevitable one. And we all survived that one anyway. The worst death was the one that happened little by little, was that lifelessness that crept into you and killed you slowly. And that's the one that we had to exercise ourselves from, to live in completion with our lives, with no I love yous, no I forgive yous that have been unsaid. To not postpone anything. So this weekend is going to be a weekend of exploration. This is the very first time there's such a conference here. For the very first time that the subject of orbs is explored. And you are the very first people to explore it. So we're going to be setting the groundwork for further research, study, exploration. But I want to encourage each and every one of us personally to take that research, that study, that exploration home with us. Because there is a great giant hand reaching out to each one of us from the future, saying, dream us into being, and giving us the power, the resources, and the guidance that's available to us right now. Please join me in closing sacred space and to the winds of the south, great serpent, mother of the waters. Thank you, Mother. Thank you for wrapping your coils of light around us, for teaching us your ways, the beauty way, to walk with beauty on the earth, to touch everyone we touch with beauty. Oh. To the winds of the west, Mother, Sister, Jaguar. Thank you, Mother, for walking among us, for showing us the ways of integrity, of impeccability, for showing us the ways beyond death. Oh. To the winds of the north, grandmothers, grandfathers, ancient ones, we've come to honor you today, you who've come before us and you who will come after us, our children's children. Thank you. Oh. To the winds of the east, the place of the rising sun, eagle, condor, thank you. Thank you, Mother, for holding us under your wing, for teaching us the ways of flight and the ways of sight. Oh. Pachamama, Santa Tierra, Mother Earth, thank you, Mother. Thank you for your blessings, your breath, your waters, and to all our relations. Oh. Inti Taita, Father, Son, Grandmother Moon, to all the star nations, our star brothers and sisters, the sacred mountains of this land, and Great Spirit, Creator of all, thank you for bringing us together today. Bless us in our time together this weekend. Bless us in our journeys. Accompany us as we go back to our homes, to our villages, to our loved ones. Oh. Thank you, everyone. Blessings. Walk in beauty. Thank you.
Let's thank Alberto Villoldo.